What if demons aren't myths? What if they are memories? For thousands of years, across continents, languages, and religions, humans have described the same presence. Something watching. Something whispering. Something that enters the human mind and changes it. Was it imagination? Mental illness? Mass hysteria? Or something older than all of it? Tonight, we begin the ultimate investigation. What is a demon? The word demon did not begin as evil. In ancient Greece, the term daemon meant spirit. Not monster. Not devil. A daemon was a guiding force, something between human and divine. The philosopher Socrates even claimed he had a personal daemon, a voice that warned him when he was about to make a mistake. So how did we go from guiding spirit to embodiment of evil? Cut to early Christian art. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, older pagan spirits were reclassified. Spirits once neutral became enemies. Why? Because Christianity introduced a new cosmic structure: God versus rebellion, heaven versus hell, obedience versus pride. And in that framework, demons were no longer ambiguous. They were fallen angels. According to Christian theology, before there were demons, there was a rebellion. The most beautiful and powerful angel in heaven, Lucifer. Lucifer's name means light-bringer. But pride entered the story. The belief developed that Lucifer desired equality with God. War broke out in heaven, and he was cast down. Later Christian tradition identifies Lucifer with Satan. Satan, the adversary. And according to the book of Revelation, a third of the angels fell with him. Those fallen angels became demons. This belief shaped Western civilization, especially in the United States, because America was deeply influenced by Protestant Christianity. In this worldview, evil is not abstract. It is personal, strategic, active. That belief shaped everything from sermons to horror films. Now we step back further, because demons did not begin in Christianity. In Mesopotamia, one of the earliest civilizations, people feared night spirits that attacked during sleep. In Jewish folklore, there is Lilith, a night entity blamed for infant deaths and seduction. Then there is Asmodeus, associated with lust and destruction of marriages. Across cultures we see patterns: night attacks, sleep paralysis, sudden illness, personality shifts, temptation. Different languages. Same archetype. And here is the disturbing part. Many of these cultures never contacted each other. So why the similarity? Is this universal psychology? Or universal encounter? Let that sit. Now we bring it home. Because America is obsessed with possession. Reenactment, child screaming, parents praying. In the 1940s, a case involving a young boy shocked the country. It later inspired the film The Exorcist. Witnesses reported objects moving, unknown languages, violent reactions to prayer. But psychiatrists had another explanation: dissociative disorders, trauma response, schizophrenia. Here's what actually happens during so-called possession cases: sudden behavioral change, religious fixation or aversion, glossolalia, strength during episodes, memory gaps afterward. Now let's talk science. Sleep paralysis affects millions of Americans. During it, you wake up, your body cannot move, you hallucinate. You feel pressure on your chest, you sense a presence. Across cultures, this becomes a demon, a shadow man, a witch, a jinn. The experience is real. The interpretation differs. And that's critical. Because what we call demon may be the brain trying to explain fear. But that doesn't close the case. Because not every reported experience fits neatly into psychology. And that tension is where this documentary lives. Why do demon movies dominate US horror? Because they attack identity. In The Exorcist, faith is challenged. In The Conjuring, family is threatened. Demon stories represent loss of control, loss of innocence, loss of certainty, and Americans fear losing control. Addiction, violence, moral collapse. Demons become symbols for chaos inside the human soul. And when we externalize chaos, we can fight it. Every civilization describes dark entities. Every era believes it stands on the edge of spiritual war. But here is the honest question: are demons supernatural beings, or are they archetypes born from trauma, fear, and the unconscious mind? Or is the truth somewhere in between? Because whether literal or symbolic, demons feel real. And what feels real shapes human history.
Before horror films, before exorcisms, before Hollywood turned demons into monsters, there was a war. Not on earth, but in heaven. According to the Bible, evil did not begin in the human heart. It began in rebellion, and from that rebellion came demons. To understand demons in the Bible, we must begin with one name, Satan. The word Satan in Hebrew means adversary or accuser. In early Old Testament texts, Satan is not yet the red-horned villain of pop culture. He appears more like a prosecutor, an accuser in God's court. In the book of Job, Satan challenges Job's faith. He does not act independently, he asks permission. This is important. Early biblical tradition does not portray Satan as equal to God. He is subordinate. So how did he evolve into the ruler of demons? That shift develops later, especially in intertestamental Jewish writings and Christian theology. The modern image of Satan, ruler of hell, commander of demons, is built from multiple scriptures combined, and American Christianity inherited that full narrative. Now, we address one of the most debated passages in the Bible, the fall of Lucifer. The name Lucifer appears in Isaiah 14, but here's where it gets complicated. Historically, Isaiah 14 is directed at the king of Babylon, yet later, Christian interpretation saw a deeper layer, a cosmic rebellion hidden in the text. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star. Morning star in Latin became Lucifer, and so the tradition formed. Lucifer, once radiant and powerful, desired to ascend above God. Pride led to rebellion. Rebellion led to war, and war led to expulsion. Now we move to Revelation 12, and there was war in heaven, a dragon, his angels, cast down to earth. This is where demons enter Christian belief. They are fallen angels, not separate species, not pagan spirits, but corrupted celestial beings. For American believers, this shapes everything. Demons are intelligent, strategic, ancient, and organized. The Bible does not provide a demon census, but Revelation suggests a third of heaven's angels fell. Is that literal? Symbolic? Theologians debate. But the implication is massive. A structured spiritual hierarchy now opposed to humanity. In Ephesians 6, Paul writes about principalities, powers, rulers of darkness. This is not random chaos. It implies rank, structure, territory. Some American evangelical traditions interpret this as spiritual warfare happening daily. Cities assigned demonic rulers, nations influenced by unseen forces. Other denominations interpret it symbolically, representing systemic evil and corruption. Both interpretations exist in America today, and both fuel the cultural fear of demons. Now we examine the Gospels, because this is where demon encounters intensify. Jesus casting out demons appears repeatedly. One of the most famous accounts, the man called Legion, the demon says, "My name is Legion, for we are many. The spirits enter pigs. The pigs rush into water." Now pause. Whether literal or theological narrative, this story shaped Christian understanding. Demons can inhabit, they can speak, they recognize divine authority. In first-century Judea, illness was often attributed to spirits, blindness, seizures, mute speech. Modern readers immediately think epilepsy, psychosis, neurological disorders. And here's the tension. Were these medical conditions misunderstood? Or does the biblical narrative describe something beyond medicine? Scholars divide sharply here. Conservative theologians argue literal possession. Secular scholars argue ancient worldview framing mental illness. And most Americans today fall somewhere between curiosity and skepticism. The Bible establishes precedent, but America institutionalized it. The Catholic Church maintains official exorcism protocols. Priests must receive authorization. Psychological evaluation is required before declaring possession. Why? Because the Church acknowledges mental illness exists, yet it also maintains that rare cases defy explanation. That balance is rarely shown in media. In Protestant America, deliverance ministries grew rapidly in the 20th century. Spiritual warfare language became common. Demons blamed for addiction. Demons blamed for depression. Demons blamed for generational sin. This shaped American subculture deeply, especially in the South and Midwest. So when Hollywood releases possession films, they are not inventing fear. They are tapping into inherited theology. Let's separate myth from text. The Bible does not describe horned red creatures with pitchforks, independent demon kingdoms ruling hell. demons torturing people in the afterlife. Those are later developments in art and literature. The biblical demons are fallen beings, opponents of divine authority, deceivers, tempters, and most importantly, limited. They are not omnipotent. They are not equal to God. That distinction matters, because culturally, Americans often exaggerate the power of evil beyond what Scripture describes, and that exaggeration fuels fear. The Bible presents demons not as horror characters, but as symbols of rebellion. They represent humanity's struggle with moral failure, and that struggle has defined Western civilization. But if demons are fallen angels, where did angels come from? And what were they meant to be? Long before churches, long before the Bible, long before the name Satan was ever spoken, human beings were already afraid of something in the dark, and they gave it names. Before Christianity, there were demons. The earliest written civilization we know of, Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, 4,000 years ago, people here believed the world was filled with invisible spirits. Not metaphorically, literally. They believed spirits caused disease, infertility, miscarriages, sudden death, and madness. Among them were beings called Yudiku and Lilu. These spirits attacked at night. They sat on the chest. They paralyzed their victims. Sound familiar? Today, we call that sleep paralysis. But to ancient Mesopotamians, it was a spirit assault. They had no neuroscience, no psychology, but their descriptions mirror modern experiences almost exactly. Chest pressure, shadow figure, terror, hallucination. This is the first major pattern. Across time, humans interpret fear through the lens of culture, but the experience remains similar, and that similarity is unsettling. Early Hebrew religion did not immediately describe a detailed demon hierarchy. In fact, early Israelite belief focused more on divine sovereignty than demonic rebellion. But over time, especially during the Babylonian exile, Jewish thought absorbed surrounding ideas. This is where figures like Lilith enter the story. Lilith appears in later Jewish folklore as a night entity associated with seduction, infant mortality, and shadow visitation. Whether literal belief or symbolic myth, the figure reflects something ancient: fear of what happens in the dark. Then comes another figure, Asmodeus. In the Book of Tobit, part of the deuterocanonical texts, Asmodeus kills 7 husbands of a woman before her wedding night. This is not random storytelling. It reflects a culture trying to explain tragedy, sudden death, unexplained illness, broken marriages. Demons became explanations for chaos. And as Jewish thought evolved, so did demonology. By the time of the Second Temple period, Jewish texts describe fallen angels, corrupted watchers, and spiritual corruption of humanity. And this directly influences later Christian belief. Now we move east to ancient Persia, to a religion called Zoroastrianism. Here, we encounter something revolutionary: a cosmic battle between good and evil, light versus darkness, truth versus deception. In Zoroastrian belief, evil is personified in a destructive spirit opposed to the Creator. This dualistic structure likely influenced Jewish thought during exile under Persian rule, and from there, it shaped Christianity. Now pause and reflect. The idea of a structured army of evil spirits may not have originated in the Bible. It may have developed through cultural exchange. This doesn't invalidate belief. It deepens the historical complexity, because ideas travel and religions evolve within history. For an American audience, this is critical. It shows that demon belief wasn't created in isolation. It emerged through centuries of cultural layering. In ancient Greece, the word was daimon, not evil, not monstrous. A daimon was a spiritual force. Even heroes could have daimons guiding them. The philosopher Socrates claimed he heard an inner voice, his daimon, that warned him against mistakes. No horror, no possession, just spiritual presence. So how did daimon become demon? When Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, pagan spirits were reclassified. Neutral spirits became enemies. Why? Because monotheism allows no spiritual middle ground. There is God or opposition. And so daimons became demons. This shift is not just theological, it's political. Religious consolidation often reframes previous gods as devils. We've seen it throughout history. And this reclassification permanently changed Western culture. Now we step back. Mesopotamia, Hebrew folklore, Persia, Greece. Different regions, different languages, different eras. But similar themes: night attacks, possession-like behavior, temptation, destruction of family, moral corruption, illness without explanation. So what does this mean? There are only 3 realistic explanations: shared psychological phenomena, cultural storytelling evolution, or a genuine shared external experience. Science leans toward psychology. Religion leans toward spiritual reality. History shows transmission of ideas, but none of these explanations fully eliminate the others. And that's what makes this topic powerful. Before Christianity, before organized theology, human beings feared something in the dark. They described it differently, but they described it consistently. Shadow, oppression, whispers, temptation. So, when Christianity later formalized demon doctrine, it wasn't inventing fear, it was organizing it. The question is not, where did demons come from? The deeper question is, why has humanity always believed they exist? In ancient times, possession meant spirits. In modern times, it means diagnosis. But what happens when the symptoms don't fit either category? Tonight, we examine cases that refuse to disappear. The people who claim they were not sick, but invaded. Before we examine cases, we need clarity. In Christian theology, possession means a non-human spiritual entity inhabits a human body, not influencing, not tempting, inhabiting. The New Testament contains multiple accounts of possession and exorcism. In modern Catholic doctrine, possession is extremely rare. The Church requires psychological evaluation, medical testing, multiple interviews, authorization from a bishop. Why? Because mental illness can mimic possession. Symptoms often reported: sudden violent personality shifts, aversion to sacred objects, speaking unknown languages, glossolalia, abnormal strength, memory loss after episodes. Now here's the tension. Every one of these symptoms can also appear in psychiatric disorders, and that's where controversy begins. In 1949, a teenage boy, known under the pseudonym Roland Doe, became the center of one of the most famous possession cases in U.S. history. Strange scratching sounds, furniture moving, words appearing on his skin. Priests documented the case in detailed notes. The events later inspired The Exorcist. During the reported exorcism, the boy allegedly spoke in different voices. He displayed extreme strength. He reacted violently to prayer. But skeptics argue he could have been deeply disturbed, attention-seeking, traumatized. No video evidence exists, only testimony. So the question becomes, is testimony enough? And why did trained priests believe it? This case shaped American fear of possession for generations, because it didn't happen in medieval Europe. It happened in modern America. Now we leave America briefly, because this case influenced American perception deeply. Anneliese Michel, 1970s Germany, a young woman began experiencing seizures, diagnosed with epilepsy, but she also claimed to see demonic faces, hear voices, reject religious objects. 2 priests performed 67 exorcism sessions over 10 months. Recordings exist. Her voice during sessions sounds distorted, aggressive, animalistic. She died from malnutrition and dehydration. Her parents and priests were charged with negligent homicide. This case forced the modern world to confront something uncomfortable. When does belief become dangerous? Was she mentally ill, or was she spiritually convinced she was damned? Even today, millions debate this case because it doesn't fit neatly into either explanation. Now we slow down and bring in science. Psychiatrists identify several conditions that can resemble possession: dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, severe trauma response, temporal lobe, epilepsy, sleep paralysis, mass psychogenic illness. Let's focus on sleep paralysis. Millions of Americans experience it. You wake up, you cannot move, you sense a presence. You may see a shadow figure. Across cultures, that becomes a demon, a witch, a shadow man, a jinn. The brain under stress can create terrifyingly real hallucinations. Add religious background, and the hallucination takes spiritual form. This does not mean experiences are fake. It means the human brain is powerful. But here's the complication. Not every reported possession involves hallucination. Some involve extreme group belief. Entire families convinced someone is inhabited, and group belief can amplify behavior dramatically. You may think exorcism is rare in America. It isn't. The Catholic Church has increased trained exorcists in recent decades. Deliverance ministries operate across the country. Some claim demons cause addiction, anxiety, generational trauma. This belief can be empowering for some, giving a framework to fight struggle. But it can also prevent people from seeking medical care. That balance is critical. Serious clergy often emphasize medical evaluation first, but not every case is handled responsibly, and that's where danger enters. Possession cases sit at the crossroads of faith, psychology, culture, fear. There are three possibilities. Demons are literal beings capable of inhabiting humans. Possession is misunderstood mental illness. It is a complex interaction of belief, trauma, and neurological phenomena. Each explanation has evidence. Each explanation has gaps. And that is why this topic refuses to die. Because something about possession feels real. Even if we cannot agree on what it is, imagine a world where your neighbor, your friend, even your own family member could accuse you of witchcraft, and that accusation could be a death sentence. This wasn't a fantasy novel. This was the grim reality in Salem, Massachusetts, in 1692. What sparked this terrifying chapter in American history? How did an entire community descend into a frenzy of fear, accusations, and executions? Today, we re-journeying back to the chilling events of the Salem witch trials to uncover the truth behind the hysteria. It all started in the frigid winter of 1692 in the small, isolated Puritan community of Salem Village. The local minister's daughter, 9-year-old Betty Paris, and his niece, 11-year-old Abigail Williams, began to exhibit bizarre and disturbing behaviors. They would scream, throw things, contort their bodies into strange positions, and complain of being pinched and pricked by invisible forces. Soon, other young women in the village, like Ann Putnam Jr., started showing similar symptoms. The local doctor, unable to find any physical cause for their afflictions, made a fateful diagnosis. They were bewitched. The pressure mounted to find the culprits, the witches who were tormenting these girls. The afflicted girls were relentlessly questioned. Who is hurting you? Under this intense pressure, they finally named their tormentors. The first three accused were Tituba, the Paris family's enslaved servant from the Caribbean, Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, and Sarah Osborne, an elderly impoverished woman who rarely attended church. These women were social outcasts, easy targets in a society that demanded conformity. They were arrested and examined in public. During the examinations, the afflicted girls would fall into fits, screaming that the accused women's spirits were attacking them. It was a terrifying spectacle. Initially, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne maintained their innocence. But Tituba, perhaps seeing a way to save herself or simply breaking under the intense questioning, confessed. She didn't just confess, she spun a wild tale of a dark world filled with black dogs, red cats, and a tall, dark man who wanted her to sign his book. She claimed there were other witches in Salem working alongside her. Tituba's confession was like throwing gasoline on a fire. It confirmed the community's deepest fears. A satanic conspiracy was afoot, right in their midst. The floodgates of accusation opened. The afflicted girls, now empowered and at the center of attention, began pointing fingers at more and more people. The accusations started to climb the social ladder, targeting respected members of the community, like Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, a devout and elderly matriarch. People were shocked. If someone as pious as Rebecca Nurse could be a witch, then anyone could. Fear turned to paranoia. The very fabric of the community began to unravel. Old family feuds, land disputes, and personal grudges bubbled to the surface. Disguised as righteous accusations of witchcraft, if you had a disagreement with your neighbor, you could accuse them of sending their specter to harm your livestock. It was a terrifyingly effective way to settle scores. So, what was really going on here? Historians have debated the causes for centuries, and it's likely a combination of factors. Life in Salem Village was harsh. They were living on the edge of the wilderness, constantly afraid of attacks. A recent smallpox epidemic, economic hardship, and a schism within the village church had created a tense and anxious atmosphere. The Puritans had a rigid and deeply religious worldview. They believed the devil was real and actively worked to undermine their city on a hill. They saw signs of his work everywhere. Then there are the afflicted girls themselves. Were they truly bewitched? Were they faking it? Or was something else at play? One theory suggests ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on rye, a staple grain at the time. Ingesting it can cause symptoms similar to what the girls described: muscle spasms, vomiting, and hallucinations. Another theory points to a form of mass hysteria or conversion disorder where psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms. The girls, living in a repressive society with few outlets, may have unconsciously channeled their anxieties into this dramatic performance. Or perhaps, after seeing the power their accusations held, they simply continued the act, caught in a lie they couldn't escape. In June of 1692, the newly appointed governor, William Phips, established a special court to hear the witchcraft cases. This court made a critical and disastrous decision. It allowed the use of spectral evidence. This meant that if an accuser claimed to see the ghost or specter of the accused person tormenting them, that testimony could be used as evidence of guilt. How could you possibly defend yourself against that? You couldn't. The accused were trapped. If they confessed, they might be spared execution, but would have to name other witches, perpetuating the cycle. If they maintained their innocence, they were almost certainly condemned. The first person to be hanged was Bridget Bishop on June 10th. She was an outspoken woman who owned a tavern and dressed in a way that was considered scandalous by Puritan standards. Her execution marked the beginning of a summer of death. Throughout the next few months, the gallows on Proctor's Ledge saw one execution after another. 19 people, men and women, were hanged. One man, Giles Corey, an 81-year-old farmer, refused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. As punishment, he was subjected to peine forte et dure, a horrifying process where heavy stones were piled on his chest to force a plea. He endured it for 2 days, his only words reportedly being more "wait" before he died. At least 5 other people died in the squalid, overcrowded jails. As the death toll rose and accusations reached even the governor's wife, prominent figures began to question the proceedings. The influential minister, Increase Mather, argued that it was better that 10 suspected witches escape than one innocent person be condemned. The use of spectral evidence was finally disallowed. With the primary form of proof gone, the entire legal basis for the trials crumbled. In early 1693, Governor Phips officially pardoned the remaining accused and dissolved the special court. The Salem witch trials were over. The aftermath was one of deep regret and shame. The community was shattered, families were torn apart, and the local economy was in ruins. In the years that followed, apologies were issued, and some of the convictions were reversed. One of the main accusers, Ann Putnam, Jr., publicly apologized in 1706, blaming her actions on the delusion of the devil. The consequences of the Salem witch trials were profound. They served as a powerful and cautionary tale in American history about the dangers of mass hysteria, religious extremism, and the failure of due process. The principle of innocent until proven guilty, a cornerstone of the American legal system, was powerfully reinforced by the memory of what happened when that principle was abandoned. The story of Salem reminds us how quickly fear can overwhelm reason, how societies can turn on their most vulnerable members, and how easily justice can be perverted. It's a dark chapter, but one we must remember to ensure it is never repeated. The voices of the 19 who were hanged and the others who died echo through history. A solemn warning about the deadly consequences of intolerance and unfounded accusations. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating and important stories. Let us know in the comments what historical event you'd like us to explore next. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered where our ideas about demons come from? Those shadowy figures with horns and wings that haunt our stories and screens? It's a journey that takes us back thousands of years to the very dawn of civilization. Let's dive into the fascinating and sometimes terrifying history of demons. Our story begins not in a fiery underworld, but in ancient Mesopotamia. Around 4000 BC, the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians lived in a world teeming with spirits, both good and bad. They didn't really have a concept of demons like we do today. Instead, they had entities like the Galu, who dragged mortals to the underworld, or the terrifying Lamashtu, a female demon who preyed on pregnant women and infants. These weren't necessarily evil, just dangerous and chaotic forces of nature that needed to be appeased or repelled with rituals and incantations. Think of them less as villains and more as supernatural hazards, like a spiritual storm or a divine plague. Then came the ancient Persians with Zoroastrianism, and things started to get a lot more black and white. This religion introduced a powerful dualism, a cosmic struggle between the ultimate good god, Ahura Mazda, and the ultimate evil spirit, Angra Mainyu, also known as Ahriman. Suddenly, the world wasn't just filled with chaotic spirits, it was a battlefield. Ahriman's followers, the Devas, were once gods but were now cast as malevolent beings, actively working to corrupt the world. This is one of the first times we see a clear concept of a demonic hierarchy fighting against a force of pure good. This idea would have a huge impact on the religions that followed. And that brings us to the Abrahamic faiths. In early Judaism, figures like Satan were not the archvillains we know today. In the book of Job, Hasatan literally means the accuser, or the adversary, acting as a sort of heavenly prosecutor, testing humanity's faith on God's behalf. But as Jewish and later Christian thought evolved, influenced by ideas from Zoroastrianism and the political turmoil of the time, Satan's role grew. He became the ultimate rebel, the fallen angel, who defied God and was cast out of heaven. The New Testament paints a much clearer picture of this demonic adversary. Jesus famously casts out demons who are depicted as followers of Satan, causing physical illness and spiritual torment. This is where the image of demons as minions of a singular, powerful, evil entity really solidifies in the Western world. They became the sworn enemies of God and humanity, responsible for temptation, sin, and suffering. The Middle Ages were the golden age for demonology. This was a time of immense faith, but also great fear. The fear of hell was very real, and the Church had a vested interest in defining the enemy. Scholars and theologians like Thomas Aquinas meticulously categorized demons, creating complex hierarchies much like the angelic choirs in heaven. This period gave us the grimoires books of magic and ritual that supposedly taught people how to summon and control these infernal beings. Books like the Lesser Key of Solomon listed the names, ranks, and abilities of 72 different demons, each with a specific sigil and purpose. You had kings like Baal, dukes like Astaroth, and presidents like Marbas. These weren't just vague, shadowy monsters anymore. They were individuals with personalities and jobs. This systematization made demons seem both more understandable and more terrifyingly real. It was also during this time that the classic physical image of the demon took shape. A monstrous hybrid of human and animal features: horns, hooves, leathery wings, and a forked tail drawing on imagery of pagan gods like Pan and Cernunnos to visually signify their opposition to Christian divinity. Then came the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, a time of reason and scientific inquiry. You might think this would be the end of demons, but you'd be wrong. While intellectuals questioned their existence, the fear of demons fueled the horrific witch trials that swept across Europe and America. Thousands were accused of making pacts with the devil, and demons were believed to be their constant companions, granting them dark powers in exchange for their souls. The Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches, became a bestseller, a terrifying guidebook for identifying, prosecuting, and punishing supposed witches. As we moved into the 19th and 20th centuries, our relationship with demons changed again. With the rise of psychology, many phenomena once attributed to demonic possession were reinterpreted as mental illness. The demon became less of an external threat and more of an internal one. It transformed into a metaphor for our own inner darkness, our fears, our anxieties, our repressed desires. Think of stories like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Hyde isn't a literal demon, but he represents the monstrous potential lurking within a respectable man. The demon became a symbol of the human shadow self. And then, cinema was born. The 20th century brought demons to the big screen, and they've been a box office draw ever since. Early films often depicted them in classic religious terms, but it was 1973's The Exorcist that changed everything. The film presented demonic possession, not as a medieval fable, but as a visceral, terrifying reality that could invade a modern, secular home. It tapped into deep-seated fears and made demons frightening to a whole new generation. Since then, horror movies have given us every kind of demon imaginable. We've had suave, tempting demons in films like The Devil's Advocate, and monstrous, relentless entities in the Conjuring franchise. Some are tragic figures, some are cosmic horrors, and some are even darkly comedic. Popular culture has become a new kind of grimoire, defining and redefining what a demon is and what it represents. Shows like Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer created entire mythologies around demon hunting, turning ancient lore into modern entertainment. Today, in the digital age, the evolution continues. Demons now haunt the internet. They're the subjects of creepypastas, the villains in video games, and the stars of countless YouTube conspiracy theories. Online communities spring up around fictional demonic entities like Slender Man, blurring the lines between folklore and reality. The demon has become a meme, a digital ghost in the machine, reflecting our modern anxieties about technology, misinformation, and the loss of control in a hyper-connected world. So what does this long history tell us? It shows that demons have always been a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears and moral struggles. Whether they were chaotic spirits in ancient Babylon, fallen angels in the Middle Ages, psychological symbols in the 20th century, or digital phantoms today, their form changes, but their function remains the same. They are the personification of the other, the darkness we define ourselves against. They represent chaos, temptation, and the parts of ourselves we dare not acknowledge. From ancient clay tablets to the glowing screens of our phones, the story of the demon is ultimately the story of humanity's ongoing battle with the darkness, both outside and within. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of demons. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the history of the strange and supernatural. Let me know in the comments what your favorite depiction of a demon is in popular culture. See you next time.
If you want to hear more about these kind of videos, do subscribe to the channel.